Welcome back. In the last video, I talked about training and I wouldn't say it's my training philosophy per se, but some of the ways I go about training. I wanted to do another video on breeding as well to talk about it because it's a topic that everybody seems to talk around. I don't really talk about it in much depth, very much that I'm aware of. Uh, in part because there's a lot of different views on breeding. But I just wanted to make a video talking about what I do, what I'm trying to accomplish with breeding. Because of all the things that I do, that's probably the most important with dogs is decisions about breeding. Um, Breeding, obviously, there's a strong component. You need to know how breeding works scientifically. What traits are heritable, what can be passed on, what can't, what's more likely to be passed on, those kinds of things. And those things aren't known with any real precision. So I'm not going to get into into that in any great detail. I'm certainly not an expert on that. I've read about it some, but I'm not an expert on it. There is a good website on it. It's run by a Dutchman named Vandendoel. I can't remember his first name. Maybe Serge Vandendoel. And he has a pedigree service for ISDS. But if you type in Border Collie Info, I believe is the name of his website. He's got a lot of stuff on breeding dogs, on characteristics, what can and can't be passed on, that kind of stuff. So I would encourage you to go look at that uh, to get a better view of it, especially as it relates to border collies. I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've got some interest in border collies and probably have some knowledge of the breed. The most famous forebearer in the border collie world is Whiston Cap, ISDS 31154. Now, he's not the most influential, however. Wilson's Cap, wartime Cap, uh, ISDS 3036, is actually the most influential dog in the border collie breed. Whiston Cap goes back to wartime Cap something like 16 times, but a lot of other dogs do too that don't have it. There aren't any dogs anymore that don't have any Whiston Cap blood. But for a while there were up through probably up through the 80s. You could still get some that didn't have Whiston Cap blood, and even those would have had a lot of wartime Cap in them. So you can look at his website there and see a lot about the different breeds, not the different breeds, but the different lines of dogs. And there aren't really that many distinct lines anymore. They've been integrated so much that it's difficult to say that there's one particular type or line anymore. Now, when it comes to breeding, I like to follow the philosophy, dictum, whatever you want to call it, of breeding a type to a type. All indications are that if you want to try to maximize the ability or your likelihood of getting the type of dog you want, that what you need to do is breed dogs of similar characteristics and qualities. Of course, that's not always easy to do. There are a lot of limiting factors, time and money, that kind of stuff. Furthermore, unless you spend a lot of time and money going to, let's say, we use trials as an example, going to trials and watching it. Let's say there's a stud dog, and even if you've seen that dog at 10 different trials, you don't necessarily have a real good idea of how that dog behaves, what it acts like, what it does in different, because trialing situations are all fairly similar. How does the dog react to large numbers of sheep? How does the dog react to uh, adverse conditions, loud noises, stuff like that? Because all of those things are, the environmental conditions are stabilized for purposes of the trial, and so you don't get those in the trial. And so you don't really you don't really know how that's going to play out. You don't know what that dog's like. Now you can ask the owner of the stud dog. It's been my experience that information doesn't usually flow freely in those circumstances. They have a pecuniary interest here, and they're not going to be willing to tell you all that you want to know. For example, um, I bred a couple of litters last fall, and I put them on the TSDA website, but I didn't really try to sell them much. I had several people contact me about the litters, and I just openly told all of them what I thought were the faults of the parents, the dam and the sire. And as soon as I did that, buyers went away, because that's not something that most. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different people selling dogs. They don't tell you the faults. They don't want to tell you the faults. They just want, oh, everything's wonderful. Well, what about? Oh, well, they can do that. They won't tell you those things. So now it is true that the faults that I think of and that I experience with a dog could be relative to me. There's something that I am causing, that I am inducing, that I am making possible somehow with the dog. But I don't mind openly admitting that. And that tends to, it's been my experience, tends to turn off the buyers. And I'm sure that's why other, let's say, stud dog owners, for example, don't want to tell you about their stud dog's faults. Now, if the dog has been a popular breeder for a while, then you can tell to some extent how the dog breeds and say, okay, well, we've got dogs that work this way. But even so, you don't know how the match is going to work with a particular female. So, all that being said, I like to try to breed a type to a type. What type do I like? Well, it's hard to get what I like. It's hard to get what anybody would like, I assume. First, what I want is a dog that has a lot of desire, a lot of keenness. Because if they don't have a lot of keenness, then they're probably not going to be able to make it through all the different standards and levels of training. Uh, Next, I want a dog that has what I would just call good sense, which the key word that would go along, balance. That by balance, I mean controls the sheep under varying circumstances and different types of sheep. Now, another way to put it, power, the power to control the sheep. There's a lot of different discussion on what is power. The way I view it is that the dog can control the sheep, doesn't lose control of the sheep. Doesn't matter how hard the sheep are to handle, the dog can control the sheep. After that, I look for I. I like, because of the fact that I want a dog with good balance and fair amount of power. It's been my experience that a dog with a fairly high level of I is more likely to have those qualities as well. The problem that most people have with a strong-eyed dog is stickiness, especially for trialing. They don't like stickiness. They want instant reaction to commands, and I can understand why in a trialing situation. I don't need that. In fact, I don't want it. I want the dog to know what to do on his own. Now, it is true, so okay, I want the dog to go a certain direction. I don't mind living with the fact that the dog is sticky because of I and won't instantly respond to what I say, always. Most of the time, if the dog doesn't want to take that command, it's been my experience that the dog is right. That you think that the dog needs to move somewhere else to better position himself or herself to move the sheep in a particular direction, but the dog knows better because the dog feels that pressure and its I is what's telling it that. So that's why I look for strong I, and if the dog gets sticky, wonderful, I love it. Other people don't like that. So those are the things that, after that, I like to have a dog with nice pace that will, get behind the sheep and just push them along, push them along. However, if the dog has a lot of I and tends to get sticky, then you usually don't get that real nice pace either. So I understand that those are qualities that would be rare to find in a dog, one that has a really nice pace and is a strong-eyed dog at the same time. Now, I've seen plenty of them that have nice pace and a lot of power, but don't necessarily have a lot of eye. Alan Owen's dogs tend to be like that. His famous Cap dog, who won the International in 2015, he's a dog like that. I wouldn't say Cap's a weak-eyed dog, but when I've seen him, seems to be about medium-eyed. He seems to have a lot of power, and he certainly has that wonderful pace that Alan Owen's dogs are known for. Um, but I'd like to have one with more eye. Although anything I've seen from that dog indicates to me he's certainly capable of doing anything. Um, but those are the qualities I look for. Now, I can't get those. I can't get all those qualities. Obviously, you'd like to have a nice natural outrunner. I'm not nearly as concerned about that as I used to be. Um, I, it's been my experience, a border collie can do an outrun. I'm sure there are some that can't, but it's rare. And even if they don't take to it naturally very quickly, I've never had one that by the time I had worked with it for several months that I couldn't develop a good outrun on it. I mean, it's never been an issue. So that's not something that I look. I don't breed for that. I don't care what the dog did on its outrun when it first started. It's absolutely meaningless to me. For most trialists, that's not going to be the case. They want that wide out the top and come in and lift them up. Okay, wonderful. I don't need that. I want the dog to get the sheep to me. I don't tiptoeing up to the sheep. I want him. It depends on the sheep. I want him moving the sheep. But the outrun is not one that I care about in the least. I do not care what kind of outrun the dog has naturally. I'm going to train the dog. If the dog doesn't do a natural outrun, I'm going to train him to do an outrun. If I can't train him to do an outrun, I'll get rid of it. It's that simple. So I don't worry about outrun. I don't worry about flanks. I mentioned this before when I was talking about training. I don't care. This idea that the dog needs to turn off and immediately relieve pressure on its flank, that's crazy as far as I'm concerned. No, that's not good. And again, it will depend on the sheep, but the kind of sheep I have, and I don't buy new sheep. I don't funnel sheep out. I'm not a full-time farmer or rancher. I don't funnel sheep out constantly so I can have fresh sheep all the time. But all the sheep I've ever had, and you can see here in the background, it's a mixed bunch. I got Barbados, Katahdin, Dorper. They're all hair sheep that should be relatively light, but they're not necessarily light. Pressure needs to be applied to those sheep. A dog that flanks squarely off those sheep, the sheep are going to interpret that as weakness, and they're going to start challenging the dog. Now, maybe the dog really isn't weak, but maybe it is. And it's been my experience that dogs that do easily flank off and square off their flanks without much trouble do tend to be weak, because the reason they're doing that is to break the pressure. The sheep sense that immediately and start challenging the dog. So if it is in fact a weakness on the dog's part that is leading it to flank squarely, you've got a problem at that point. I don't want that problem. I'd rather have the dog in tight and getting on the sheep. Now, this is not good for trotting because you're going straight line, a straight line. I don't need straight lines. I need the sheep put where I want them. It's nice if they go in a straight line, but that's not the main objective. The main objective is to get them where I want them. And that's not always easy to do. They may be in a wooded area, because I live in an area in East Texas where you got a lot of wood. They may be now they usually are going to stay in the pasture, but they may get into the fringe, and they'll kind of try to get into that area, transition area, brushy area between the edge of the wooded area and the pasture. If you got a weak dog, you can't get them out of that area. That dog, the sheep have to feel the power of that dog that pushes them out of that area and gets them back into the pasture. And square flanks won't do that for you. So flanks are something that I don't look for when breeding a dog. Now, having said all this stuff, I can't get all those things that I'm looking for. The closest thing I have to that in any one dog is my dog Hank right now, and he certainly doesn't have all those things. He doesn't have the pace I want. He does have a lot of the other things, and I haven't even bred him yet because I own Hank Sire, who's Tay, uh, who was imported by E.B. Rayleigh, and I got him from E.B. About a year and a half ago in May of 2019. It's September 2020 now, and I know that Tay breeds fairly well, so I've only bred Tay to this point. Um, Now, Tay has some of these qualities. Tay's a strong-eyed dog. Tay's a fairly strong, powerful dog. He's not a wonderful natural outrunner. He doesn't have as much pace as I would like. He's got fairly good pace. He's very hard to stop, which I don't mind. I talked about in the training video. So he doesn't have any outstanding problems or faults that would want to keep me from breeding him. His most outstanding quality, in my estimation, is his temperament. He's very, very steady, and he takes all kinds of pressure from you and the sheep, and nothing seems to bother him. So that's his most outstanding quality that I like. Now I've got three females, all of whom I bought with the idea of eventually, if it turns out well, I will breed them. Um, One is named Meg, who was sired by catalog from Missouri named Mo, who's been national runner-up in the catalog final several times, also a good sheep charming dog. She won't breed, naturally at least. Uh, Another dog's named Dot, a female, who I've got a video of on here, the channel. She was bred by Brent Swindoll out of his cat dog, who's the sire, and a female that he imported named Jess, who was out of Bobby Dio, Supreme Champion Joe. That's not Dryden Joe, but a later Joe. It's a Welsh bred dog. And then I have another dog named Kate, who I got from Monica Treadway. And Kate is basically the Welsh lines on both sides, on both her father, her grandsires, Tanhill Glen, and on the bottom side, she's also got Kevin Evans breeding on the bottom. She's more of the type of dog, the flanky kind of dog. So I have bred both Dot and Kate to Tay twice now. That I had litters out of both of them last October 2019, and I had litters out of Dot and Kate this July. I still have most of the pups from the first mating that resulted in those born last fall, and I have them all from this one that was born, both of these litters that were born in July. Now the types. Dot is a nice pushy pace dog. She has pretty good flanks. But temperamentally, she has what I would think of as faults, in that if you put a lot of pressure on her, she gets worried, and the sheep sense that, and she has trouble moving the sheep. But it's not, it's not real bad by any means. But so Tay's temperament, I think of, hopefully that will be able to complement her lack of steady temperament in that instance, and make up for what I think of it as that deficiency. I don't know. I don't know enough about the other. I don't have any pups old enough. The oldest ones are 11 months old now, and I don't know that they're gonna how their temperaments are going to be yet. I've got a couple of them that I'm hopeful, because they're showing good steady temperament so far, but they haven't gone through training yet. So you don't know until you start training them and getting advanced in the training how they're going to respond to different situations. The Kate, on the other hand, is a more natural dog in terms of flanking and outrunning, and Kate did very well when I first got her. And I trained her very quickly. In fact, I'm thinking I did it too quickly, because I got her in June of 2018, and within 6 weeks I had her. She could run a course, and was doing very well. But I noticed that some of that flanking stuff where they would flank square off the sheep, and that seems to be an indication to the sheep that maybe the dog doesn't like the pressure. Some of the ewes began to sense that in her and began to challenge her. And at first she had no problem with it, but slowly over a period of time, and probably from the middle of July to the middle of August of 2018, she began to become more and more hesitant. I should have sensed that at the time, and eased off on her, because she was only 14, 15 months at the time. But I didn't think about what was going on, and I think I did damage to her by trying to keep her up all the time anyway. And she regressed after that, and I did finally stop working her for a while, and I've been trying to slowly bring her back ever since, but she never has returned to what she was before, and I think it's because she didn't take as much pressure as I was putting on her, and I didn't understand at the time that I needed to ease off on the pressure. So again, even though I blame myself for that, I say it's a temperamental issue that she has, and it's, I'd rather her not have it, but she does. But she certainly has enough natural ability that I want to breed her anyhow. Now, when I breed her to Tay, I'm not breeding the type to a type because she's the flanking natural dog, natural outrunner, that kind of dog, natural trial dog, basically. Whereas Tay is a strong, pushy dog with a fair amount of eye. Uh, Kate has a fair amount of eye, but not as much as Tay. So when and I see this in the pups from Kate bred to Tay, their temperaments are more. It's not that they've got bad temperaments. Some of them may have. I can't tell for sure yet. But there's a wider range of temperaments in her litters. Whereas in the litters from Tay and Dot, the 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 pups are more uniform in their temperaments, and they seem to be pretty much a lot like Tay with a little bit of Dot's quirkiness in them. There's a range in Kate's pups. Some of them are more what I would think of as a temperamental, kind of flighty, like Kate herself is. And some of them are more steady, kind of like, and that tends to be the males seem to be more steady like Tay, and the females tend to be a little more temperamental like Kate. But I can't say for certain that that's the case. But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to breed a type to a type, but I don't always get to breed a type to a type. There are limiting financial factors here, and the reality is I need numbers. I need to breed enough dogs that I can, and I don't. I mean, I don't mind selling a few pups, but I'm not trying to sell them. I haven't sold any of them to this point. But I'd rather get them up to where they start showing on sheep, and I can make choices on which pups I think are showing the qualities that I want that I have described earlier, and that's what I'm looking for, and you know that's my breeding philosophy. I'm trying to breed for those types, and we'll see how it goes. Now, the next time I breed Dot, probably I will breed her to Hank. This is Hank. Hank is a son of Tay. He's a better working dog than Tay, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a better breeding dog than Tay. So I'm going to probably breed Dot to Tay, excuse me, to Hank, and see if there's how different that is from the pups she had with um with Tay. Uh, Hank's temper he's younger, he's not quite 3 yet. Hank's temperament is not quite as steady as Tay. It's certainly still very good. Uh, and he's got more natural balance than Tay, not as much natural push. He's got more what I would just call pure power, however. So I want to see how he crosses on Dot. And that's basically it. So I will hopefully be making some, as I mentioned before, some videos here pretty quickly on training some of the younger dogs. I'll probably try to make some showing Hank as well as I work with him. And we'll be able to talk about these things that I've mentioned in these last couple of videos. I'm going to try to do a whole series of videos on training and breeding border collies and my views on it and what it is that I'm trying to accomplish here. So I will see you in the next video.